Welcome, everybody, to DAT Poker Podcast, episode 77. This podcast presented by Daniel Negreanu's Masterclass of Poker. Head on over, masterclass.com. Daniel has a very in-depth, especially if you're getting ready for the World Series of Poker, which we're going to talk about, the online version. Head on over, masterclass.com. Daniel will get you sorted. We'll get your game in order for the big tournament. I'm your host, Dave Schwartz, alongside the producer of producers, Mr. Roscoe P. Coltrane.
Oh, hello, fellow hunker-downers.
Mr. T. Chan.
Great to be on. So excited to be back. There is so much poker stuff to talk about. I don't even know how we're going to cram it in. We've had too long without a show, and now we got to get right to it. But
the big story of the week, of course, is the NHL lottery draw that Ottawa got screwed on. No, and Daniel Negreanu in Las Vegas.
Yeah, we got to get right to the poker. But before we do that, guys, we're not off the hook, all right? We're doing This is the Washington Capitals, in case you didn't know, all right? So
stop to patronizing. We know it's the Caps.
All right, just for those people that don't know that are watching, not everyone would. All right, we're going to start with Adam. You each get a guess, okay? Until you figure it out, we're going to go clue by clue. First clue. It was the 13th pick in the 2002 draft by the Washington Capitals. Adam.
2002. Pass.
Terrence.
I'm just gonna Michael Pavanka. I don't know.
Wow. No, that's wait.
I know.
Terrence is up for clue number 2. He scored 40 goals in 2009. 40. Go ahead, Terrence.
Oh, it's on me. Jesus, I don't know. Pass.
The son of Peter Bondra.
No. All right. So this one's going to be back for Adam. He played mostly in Washington. Then at the end of his career, he played 3 years in Carolina, and the last season was in Montreal.
3 years Carolina, last season Montreal. He was the captain of the Washington Capitals, scored 40 goals in 2009. Wow.
Never said he was the captain.
Oh, you got the C on there.
Well,
no. Oh, so your hand's over it. I thought it was the C. 40. No, pass.
Terrence?
I got nothing. I don't know.
So Terrence,
I'm going to embarrass myself again.
Terrence, you're up next. All right. After that, he played 4 seasons. He still, I think, played 4 seasons in the KHL.
Oh,
I got it.
Go ahead, Terrence.
Is it? It's not Kuznetsov, is it? No.
It's not.
No, he's there.
No.
It's Jaromir Jagr.
It is not Jaromir Jagr.
Oh.
All right.
When did Jaromir Jagr play?
Oh, he played in Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
Czechoslovakia.
Yeah. Back to Adam. All right. He's very good friends with Alexander Ovechkin.
He's good buddies. Well, that's not Kuznetsov. Played 4 years. Pass. Wow, this is embarrassing.
I don't know. Backstrom?
No. All right. So back to Terrence now. He's Russian.
Well, that part we got.
Well, the KHL might have given that away.
Backstrom's not Russian. Russian player. I'll give you the rest of that clue. He's considered a very top talent skill-wise, like one of the most talented players. But this is true with a weak work ethic.
Sergei Gonchar. I don't know. I'm picking Washington players at random.
All right, go back to Adam.
God, I think I know. This is the guy who got in the fight, and it was the slap fight, right? Remember? Yes. I can't forget. I can't remember. I'm stumped.
All right, I'm going to go back to – all right, so first I want to say this. All right, his last name sounds like something that would come out of a –
Semin. Alexander Semin.
Yes.
I had it with the slap fight. I knew it.
Oh, that's all you needed to do.
Nice. Did not know he played.
I didn't even let him get the sentence out of his mouth. I prematurely spewed semen out of my mouth.
Oh my lord.
Oh my God, you guys. That was awesome.
Okay, I got an easy one. I know everybody is just loving this at home, by the way. I got an easy one. This player.
I already know.
Oh, you already know? Wait, well, see if Daniel gets it.
Okay.
This player played 3 seasons for this team, the Medicine Hat Tigers.
I already know.
He wore
Put me in coach.
20 for the Medicine Hat Tigers, then played a year in Saginaw, or half a year in Saginaw, Daniel.
Great.
He is currently second all-time for Canadians in World Series of Poker bracelets.
He's second all time. Greg Mueller wore that jersey?
No.
No, the other one.
Mueller didn't play in the dub.
What, there's another hockey player now?
Who else is a hockey player that has World Series
And that
poker bracelets?
Adam would have the game-worn jersey of, by the way.
It's a game-worn jersey.
Terrence, who is it?
Player that has more bracelets than Greg Mueller?
No, same amount. Tied, 3-all.
No, Mueller passed him this year, I think. I think that's why you messed it up, right? Mueller passed him this year. But one Daniel Idema, number 20.
Oh, Jesus.
I think Mueller passed him this year, didn't he?
No, Mueller got 30, tied Daniel this year.
Oh, anyway, tied Daniel. Okay.
Everybody's out there is in a lot of pain. Hey, look, hey, we read the comments, by the way. This is the fun. This is our fun, and then we're going to jump into the poker. We're going to get there. Also, I know people are at us about the production quality. Hey, we're new at the YouTube thing. We've been doing a podcast forever. We're going to get it. I've tried in Vancouver, by the way, to find a webcam for 3 weeks. The entire city seems to be sold out of webcams. I'm going to order one. We're going to get the production down. We're going to work our way to it.
I can tell it's already better than last week.
We're going to start a GoFundMe for Adam's webcam.
Do we send everybody a refund since they paid?
Yes.
That's true. I know.
Let's do that. All right, so let's jump into the poker. Of course, the big story. First, we've been talking about the World Series of Poker moving to online. 31 events in July at WSOP.com. We've talked about that. 54 events at GG Poker. There wasn't anything as far as a schedule. The last time we did a show, we now had a GG Poker schedule leak out, and it has now been posted on their website. So we're going to talk about that and all the different permutations of it. So let's jump into that. But first, actually, I do want to correct last week. I made two mistakes, and I'm surprised it was only two, but I made two. Chad Brown. I mentioned Chad Power. I said Chad Power got a ceremonial bracelet. It was actually Chad Brown. Apologies to everybody involved. And I think I said Joe in Nebraska will now have a chance to win a bracelet. Of course, Joe in Nebraska can't win any bracelets. He is not in a.
He's got to drive.
Or Alabama. He's not in a place where he can play on either site. So it should be Joe in Portugal, let's say. So he has a chance to win a bracelet, but Joe in Nebraska does not, or Alabama. All right, moving on. We're going to talk about the World Series of Poker. So schedule was released, 54 events on GG Poker and 31 on WSOP.com. All of them are no limit hold'em or strip deck or PLO. So there's no mixed games. There's no limit games of any kind. So there was some backlash on Twitter about that.
I do believe there's a limit hold'em.
There are two limit hold'ems.
Oh wow!
There's a 500 and a 1K.
Totally missed that. That's awesome. That's on WSOP.com, I'm guessing.
That's on GG Poker. I don't believe WSOP.com has any. Which
is strange because they do have the software that does play limit. Correct.
It's not hard to make if you've got no limit poker. I mean, I'm not a programming expert. I got like a C- in first year programming, but I'm kind of thinking if you can program no limit hold'em, you can just make the bet size fixed. But that doesn't seem to be happening I don't know why. The WSOP.com, like I was talking about this with a friend that I worked with at Ultimate Poker, because they've got this 888 software, but they've got a version of it that's filled with compliance, like just basically a bunch of nonsense to make it comply with the whims of the Nevada Gaming Commission. It's very hard for them to properly update the software. And, like people who play on WSOP.com know this. It's very hard for them to implement new features. Like there's lots of fixes that they can make, but they can't seem to because the compliance makes the software so complex and so difficult to change. Like you have to submit every version, you have to submit. It's got to be submitted.
Okay, but how long have they been in business, Terrence?
Oh, I know. It's not an excuse, but I'm just saying, like, they don't, like, the software is not good on WSOP.com, and it has a lot to do with the Gaming Commission and the compliance that they have to go through. And of course, a lot of it is on them too. Like they've got to make it better. It's not good. Like the fact that they still don't have, PLO on mobile, I think. Maybe they do. I don't think they do, but it doesn't matter because everybody's playing from home now anyway. The fact that they haven't been able to add games in, it's definitely unfortunate, and people have talked about this a lot, obviously on Twitter and so on, about how it doesn't quite feel like the World Series of Poker without the non-hold'em or the non-flop games. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough spot for WSOP.com. But again, we sort of talked about this last show, but World Series is better than no World Series. But there's a few problems out the gate with the WSOP.com version of the World Series this year for sure.
Okay, so let's move on to talking about the GG portion. Daniel, I want to ask you quickly how much GG talked to you, how much input you had. with the schedule? Was there, how did they go about picking the schedule and the buy-in amounts, the days, the games that they were playing? Do you have any insight on that?
Of course, absolutely. So there is a team, in Korea that, sort of tries to first and foremost come up with a rough draft of the schedule. That schedule is sent out to the various ambassadors for GG Poker, the Fedor Holtzes, Bryn Kennys of the world, and, Elke, Fedor, Felipe, the group. So we take a look at it, look at the different buy-ins, then it goes through, further iterations of it. And on that note, I wanted to clarify one thing that I had mistaken, because I don't know if it was on our podcast or someone else. I think it might have been, I don't know, where I said that the main event would be a freeze out. That's what I thought. Okay, so that's my bad. And then I should have put two and two together when I saw $25 million guarantee. I'm like, wait a minute, that'd be an insane freeze out. But it will be a phased heat. Each phased heat will be a freeze out, right? But it's not a freeze out in the traditional sense of what you would think, where everyone gets one bullet. There will be various flights, which is a pretty common form of tournament poker these days across all the sites, and that's how they're going to get to the 25 million. Because obviously, without multiple flights, you're not going to have 25 million. That would be a pretty massive over.
Yeah.
So just want to clarify that I was mistaken on that when I said that. Each heat will be a freeze out, but overall it is a phase tournament.
So yeah, definitely a lot of people were disappointed on that, because you did have that stance. You were against re-entry tournaments, and I'm sure you still are. You talked about that towards the end of last year, how you thought they were bad. But so when you had these conversations with GG, and I think that's why Adam asked the question, like how much were you asked, or Fedor or Elke and guys like that, to sort of say and look at this, and was that a management override this decision, or you guys not too much consulted? Because it's because for some people the main event feels like it should be something pure, and of course it's not. It's not really like the main event that would happen in Vegas this year. It's a different main event. It's an online main event, and that comes with a different thing. But talk about any conversations that you're able to talk about that you had with the tournament planning staff.
Yeah, so you bring up an important point, Terrence. I want people to know, like, this isn't a substitute for the main event. Like, this isn't the same event, as like, oh, the World Series Poker main event champion. No. Similar to the WSOP, they have a main event champion. This is the online version of our main event. Obviously, the buy-in is not 10K, it's 5K. The main event itself, who knows? Maybe, if things turn around in the fall, that could still be something that, that the Rio wants to hold. I don't know. But in the meantime, I just want to be clear that it's not a direct replacement for the main event. As far as like feedback and stuff, yeah, we absolutely had a lot of feedback on, buy-in amounts, on where and which the events were placed. Like, one of the things we wanted to do to a certain degree is, to show some respect to the WSOP, .com site, and not have like our biggest, best events overlap with them. So, there's like a 5K PLO and a 10K short deck that happens during that, first part. Because that was very, very important. We didn't want to like sort of monopolize and have everybody who's going from the US to leave. In addition to that, like as far as, the number of rebuys and all that kind of stuff, most of them similar to what the WSOP does. I think the WSOP has 2 max per event. I think we did 3. So there is there is a little bit of a, like a limit on reentry. Obviously, as I said, for me, World Series of Poker, if I got to design the whole thing and, put a schedule up, there would be no reentry. Everything would be a freeze out. If that part's not up to me, obviously a lot of people, I don't speak for everybody. I speak for myself when I say that. I know some people do like freeze outs. Other people they hate the idea of playing an event and they bust and they can't play, rebuy. I do think that the common theme amongst everyone, though, is that they'd rather see it limited to something. So that's kind of what GG did. Like the idea of unlimited reentry just turns a lot of people off. But, a limited number of 2 or 3 seemed to be palatable for most people. And that's kind of the sweet spot, if you will, that kind of addresses any sort of bigger issues people might have. Again, like I said, I'm a freeze out guy, but I understand that, you have to cater to the masses.
So what I'll say, $25 million guaranteed is going to make this the biggest online tournament in the history of online poker. It's going to pass Party Poker. I can't remember the name of the tournament, but they had one for 23 million. This one will be 25 at least if it gets to the guaranteed amount, or maybe higher, obviously. 22 heats, I believe, is the number for qualifying for day 2. So they're going to have 22 You could fire 22 bullets.
That's not like set in stone. Like somewhere,
Okay.
People saw that in an iteration. It's possible that that's going to be the number, but that's not final. We can't confirm or deny, like for sure, whether or not it's going to be 22 heats.
Okay, okay, so that's a good clarification there. We're not sure, and some of the structures, all that kind of stuff, still hasn't been released for all of the tournaments, right?
Yeah, but you can probably expect for the most part. Obviously, a Super Bounty Turbo is going to have a structure that it has. Like if you look at the WSOP structures, they're pretty much in line with what their software has done in the past. And I would imagine that our structures are going to be much in line with, what you're playing now. So, there wouldn't be much difference in terms of, what they look like going into the World Series. Obviously, maybe, if anything, a little bit more play on some of the bigger buy-ins.
I was going to say, I think the GG Poker ones will have much deeper structures and much slower structures because from what I understand, every tournament, I could be wrong on this, so if I'm wrong, please correct me. Every tournament on WSOP.com is a 1 day. And I believe that they have to make the structure, because I believe the software is not capable, we talk about software again. The software is not capable of running multiple day tournaments on WSOP.com, whereas it is on ggpoker.com. And that was another bone of contention of people about the WSOP.com schedule. They're all 1 day tournaments, and therefore they have to have really fast structures because the fields are going to be big.
They look pretty. What I'm expecting, and I'm not looking forward to this, but playing, I'm expecting tournaments to start at 3 p.m. And in some cases, to win that thing, you're talking about 6, 7 a.m. to finish.
Ooh, that's ugly. Yeah, that's really ugly.
So I guess one of the things I saw on Twitter as far as the concern for some of the stuff on GG was, obviously the 22 bullets or leaked iteration, and maybe that'll change, the 22 heats for the main event. But calling it the main event and calling it the Poker Players Championship when it's a no limit hold'em event, right? So I guess I'm wondering, when you have a WSOP branded tournament and you have something called the main event and something called the Poker Players Championships, Daniel, do you think that might be problematic at all, as far as sort of blurring the brand, I guess, or blurring the tournaments?
You bring up an important point now. So here's what we tried to do, or we were working with the World Series of Poker. We wanted to try to create a schedule that was as much like the one in the Rio, with one obviously key thing missing, which is mixed games. So we came up with names like the PLO Colossus, the Millionaire Maker. A lot of things that you would expect. The Big 50, which is actually going to be a Big 50, 5-0. So yeah, I want to make it clear too. Again, the main event. The winner of that main event is not someone that goes on the wall with Phil Hellmuth and and Johnny Chan as like the world champion of poker for the year. It is one specific part of that. With the Poker Players Championship, that's a title we used obviously to sort of create some buzz, but it is not going to be, as far as I'm concerned, obviously it cannot be a something that goes on the Chip Reese Trophy, because in order to win the Chip Reese Trophy, you have to be efficient at mixed. So they were just names to create sort of a schedule that looks similar to people. But again, agreed with you and others who have discussed this, like, it's not even asterisk worthy. It's just it's not going on that list, on either list. It's just the names that were chosen to kind of recreate what people are accustomed to.
You mentioned the Big 50, the $100 opener. So there's all kinds of price points for the casual player to come in, for $50. Somebody might, I'm sure there'll be tons of different, re-entries for the 50 and the 100, but still you got a shot for $100 or $50 of taking down a tournament. So and we talked about this, about the bracelet and does it devalue, whatever. At this point, it's great that there's all kinds of, for me anyway, for all kinds of points of entry for the poker masses out there to jump in and play for a bracelet. I think that's exciting. I think we're going to see an amazing, I don't know, is GG Poker ready for the Big 50 and the capacity that's going to, it feels like everybody with an account will play that tournament.
Yeah, let's hope so. No, seriously, so, you bring up an important point. Like, this World Series, these bracelets will be available to more people than any bracelets in history, because obviously, aside from, the buy-in amount, which excludes a big percentage of the people, there's also issues of visas. It's difficult for people to get, from certain countries over here. And then you talk about the cost associated with travel. Now, some kid in Singapore who's 22 years old for $50 could win himself a bracelet. So there's something sexy about that. There's something cool about the fact that it is far-reaching. There's a lot of opportunities. various buy-ins. And when you call something the World Series of Poker, I think it is kind of important that everyone has a chance to do that. And everyone does theoretically have a chance to like fly to Vegas and do that. But when you associate all the costs with that, it really isn't open to everyone. But now, essentially, anybody with $50 could potentially win a bracelet. It will not be easy. These bracelets are going to be hard to win. Imagine this $50 buy-in is going to have more than a few players. So to win that, you will have earned it.
You talked about an 22-year-old player from Singapore, but of course, GG Poker is 18 plus, and I think in every country that allows gambling at 18 plus. So you could actually have like a guy winning his WSOP bracelet on his 18th birthday, which would definitely be unprecedented in the World Series history.
I think right now, Annette Oberstadt won the World Series of Poker Europe main, and she was 18, I believe.
She was 18 in like a couple months or something. But yeah, somebody could literally win it on their birthday because if it's a one-day tournament, they could do that. I think there's somebody who won the World Series, like a bracelet at like 21 years and 8 days or something like that in Vegas a few years ago. And I thought that record is not going to be broken, at least in Vegas. But yeah, that would be cool to see, somebody winning an 8th bracelet on their 18th birthday, some sort of prodigy coming at you.
Okay, one other quick thing, or a couple other things. But first, note that all players are going to be their real names. You make a final table at GG Poker in the World Series of Poker, your real name will be on your account rather than your screen name. So I think that's important too, right? I mean, I think there's been a lot of discussion on Twitter. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I've seen people saying it's going to be the World Series of multi-accounting or ghosting or whatever, whatever people are talking. But I'm saying that now that is going to take care of some of it, right? Like I get that there's still going to be, unknowns or whatever, but real names is a good step. Do you guys like that?
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, I think it's one of these things that I probably wouldn't, the poker player in me wouldn't have liked 10 years ago. I would have been really unhappy about that. I always played anonymously and I didn't want really people to know who I was. But I think we're in a different era of poker now where trust is an issue. And I think, there's and even just a certain amount of fun, right? To know that you're playing, part of it is being able to sweat people at these final tables as well and sweat the big names that are there. And everybody's always wondering in the old days, oh, is this guy famous? Is that guy famous? Like who's Victor Blom? All of this stuff was a part of online poker in the early days, but I think now we're at a point where I think, as you mentioned, the transparency of playing online, as well as just the extra excitement of having real names. It's a thing that you sign up for when you play. It's a known thing when and if you're playing for a World Series of Bracelet, like for some part of you, it is ego. You want people to know that you're there at the final table. With respect to the security thing, and I want to get your guys' take on this because it was an idea that was blown up, is I wonder if we're even going to get to the point where one day webcams are going to start being in use when you're at major poker tournaments to prevent ghosting. And of course, we had Bill Perkins on and we showed that even that's not an impossible thing, but that's a step that most people aren't going to go to. But yeah, I'm in favor of real names at the final table, even though I probably wouldn't have been a few years ago.
Yeah, I think also important to note too that like while the final table will have real names, everyone who cashes, you will, the results will show real name. Like results are just like they did during the World Series of Poker last year with other online events. Like you will see the real name person because they're also in contention for player of the series, and also, for a lot of people, this is historic. These results matter. Number of it goes on the Hendon Mob list for World Series of Poker cashes, final tables, bracelets, the whole deal. So everyone who cashes, I believe, will have their name exposed. Now, GG already has fiddled with and has been implementing selective mandatory real name for specific players in their VIP games. So, and I think it's been received rather well. The transparency, as Terrence talked about with trust and whatnot, where essentially, the biggest winning pros for the most part, like they're playing with their real name. So, if you are a recreational player, you know who you're up against. And for those that need the anonymity, let's say you are some sort of celebrity or something like that, and you don't want your name, you're not going to have to reveal your name. This is true for the VIP games, which are very high stakes. And it seems to be, pretty well accepted. We weren't sure necessarily how pros would feel about that. Like, well, why do I have to show my real name? We're like, well, you know what? Here's the thing. You want to play here, which we'd love to have you. It's great. Like, this is what you're going to have to do. And the compliance has been great. Like, there has been no backlash whatsoever to it.
Yeah, you can make the argument that it might down the road lead to more multi-accounting, but I mean that's on-site security to sort of wash that out and make sure you're getting real IDs from real people and the right.
The whole point is to curb multi-accounting, really.
Yeah.
Because now, like, you don't just have, like, here's the thing, it's such a small player pool, Terrence, that like a random guy like T-Chan994, who's like, who's this guy? Like, if nobody knows who this is, or it's like, it's very unlikely, and the company itself will know. Because we can obviously, check the IPs and see where this is coming from based on player behavior and stuff like that. So it essentially makes it far more difficult for people to multi-account. Whereas, if everyone's under aliases, you just keep opening up. You could essentially open up another account, and there's no way to really detect. But now that all these pros, for the most part, are using their real name, that's who they are.
It's interesting, right? Because as these tournaments get bigger and bigger and under more scrutiny. I mean, let's be honest, right? This is the real world. People are going to try and pull stuff. They're going to try and VPN. They're going to, play for. Oh, and the other important thing, I'll get to in a sec. Sorry, let me finish my thought. Because that's going to happen. And if somebody takes down a bracelet in a $25 million main event and they've done something wrong, think their risk factor is getting higher and higher and higher for A, them not to win the money, and B, their reputation being destroyed in the poker world, whatever that's worth for that person. So the stakes get higher for anybody who wants to try this stuff, right?
Yep, I agree. I mean, it hasn't stopped a lot of their reputation. Your reputation is only valuable if you care about your name, and unfortunately, some people don't. But yeah, we've seen over the years names get outed as having done shady stuff, and we know kind of when we deal with these people in real life that we should be a little bit more careful to deal with these people. But
so the issue you're talking about here, though, what's interesting to me anyway is like it's no different than just tournament poker in general online, right? This is just this is a reality of it, whether it's World Series of Poker or not. Obviously there are plenty of other competitors who run big online tournaments like the Poker Masters or whatever the case may be. So it's not just like it's not specific to World Series poker problem. It just just like it's obviously something that every good reputable site has to spend a lot of resources monitoring and making sure that they do everything they can to offer safe and secure games.
So the other important point that I was going to mention was you cannot play from the same IP address. So if you're 4 people, let's say you're going to go and play to the WSOP.com events, and you're going to rent an Airbnb in Las Vegas, and you're all going to play from that's an old A&B Sound. I got stuck on A&B Sound Vancouver there. Sorry. But if you're going to play in Airbnb in Las Vegas and 4 of you sit down, you play from the same IP, you're not going to be able to play in these tournaments. So you're going to have to, use data roaming. You're going to have to figure out a way to get, I don't believe there's going to be any exceptions, but that's obviously a first step, but you wonder how effective it's going to be, because of course, people that are going to, go that far, maybe they can, mask it or whatever. But anyway, just wanted to quickly mention that as well. There'll be a good streaming schedule on Twitch. GG Poker's Twitch stream is going to have, I believe, 12 select events, starting July 23rd through September 5th for the main event. So if you want to watch the final tables, I'm not sure, Danny, any idea who's doing the commentary for those?
I mean, it'll be a rotating crew because there's several. I'm not exactly entirely sure. I do know that we're working with Poker Go and the schedule with ESPN with Maury and the whole deal. So they're going to make it as high end as possible and make it like a really fun viewer experience. And because obviously it's different. Normally you get to watch actual people, and now and you've seen them dabble already. Poker Go has with kind of broadcasting some online events, and I think we'll just look to continue to improve on that. And hey, something's better than nothing. I'll be doing some stuff myself. I don't think I'm going to Twitch stream because it's just very taxing, and especially if these tournaments are very, very long. I think I'm just gonna maybe like find another way through social media to kind of keep people up to date, obviously with my vlogs and things like that. But there'll be plenty of hype around it. Check out Poker News also. They're they're going to be a partner throughout and helping us create content that's really fun and relevant to what the fans want to see.
What tournaments are you most excited about? I know you're going to. I guess you're going to be playing literally everything because you have bracelet bets, and I'm sure we're going to dive right into that. But is there any on your personal schedule other than, of course, the $1,500 limit hold'em that are super exciting to you?
Yeah, so obviously normally I would say the PPC, the Players Championship, which is like,
Right.
18 weeks. Of course, this one isn't. However, it still is the one that I'm looking at because of the size of it. The $25,000 buy-in event, brings out all the heavy hitters, and I'm very, I'm sort of like, I find it very fun to play against the top competition, in an online environment and test my skills against some of the, the geniuses and wizards. And, that will be that's going to be.
Do you think you're a favorite? Do you think you're like plus EV against in a 25K against like the absolute like wizards of wizards?
I do. Yes. No, I do. I mean, again, that's obviously going to depend on what the fields look like. There is like, so for example, for people that don't understand this, there's an extreme where, because there is rake, where nobody playing could beat it. Like nobody's a favorite, right? Like if you took the five of the best players, they're all equally skilled, and whatever the rake is, doesn't matter. They're all going to be losing players. Typically, even in a 25K, you're going to have not just the top echelon pros, but you're going to have a wide selection. You have a lot of players that, high stakes players that play tournaments on GG regularly from the Asian contingent, from Europe and stuff like that. So I expect the 25K to be quite juicy, actually. And I will probably, actually almost assuredly, offer for people, because in the client at GG Poker, you can stake people instantly. You can buy and sell pieces. I'm going to probably put together some pieces of myself and some of the select events so that people can sweat at home and root me on.
Nice.
We're going to try and do podcasts as well when we can find a spot at Daniel's schedule. Also, no 25K fantasy draft for this, right, Daniel?
Yeah. First of all, typically the 25K fantasy draft is about 12 people, all from the mixed game world. So obviously the schedule doesn't really benefit them in terms of their knowledge base. In addition to that, I think it's just difficult to do this over two different sites, the WSOP portion, the GG portion, with aliases and all that kind of stuff. Just seemed a little bit too difficult to put together. So we're going to take a hiatus this year, and hopefully, we get a vaccine and can be back to playing at the Rio next year.
There was a tweet by Ryan LaPlante who was discussing the rake schedule for the WSOP.com events, and pretty high. I mean, I think it was between 11 and 12% for a lot of the tournaments. GG Poker wasn't. When I looked, I believe it was fairly reasonable with the rake. Daniel, did you have some rake discussions with GG?
No, so this is the funny thing, because rake has obviously been a topic that's associated with my name a lot. When I was a teenager playing poker, I never gave a shit what the rake was. When I was in my 20s, I never gave a shit what the rake was. When I played tournaments, I never gave a shit what the rake was. It was never something that I looked at as a primary driver of whether or not I thought a game was beatable or not, right? There were times where, in my life where I'm like, all right, this is a $5 session fee, so I'm paying $10 an hour. This one place is $10 a hand. That's a lot more. But is the game good enough to play? And if it wasn't, I just didn't play. So that's not my expertise, clearly. It's not something that I, put a lot of thought into. I figured that there are experts and mathematicians and, all the people that are going to look at and decide for themselves whether this is too much or too little. I've not come across in my career playing in a game where the reason that I couldn't beat it was the rake was too high. Like I've never seen that personally. I'm sure that exists in some cases in a lot of different places, but I've never looked at a game and go, okay, this game is not beatable because the rake is too high.
Yeah, I am looking at the rakes right now kind of as we speak, and they are a lot more reasonable on GG Poker. So for example, I'm looking at a $2,500 buy-in, no limit. On GG Poker, it's raked at $125, so that's 5% for a $2,500 buy-in, which is it's incredibly good for live poker. It's probably like slightly on the higher side for online poker, but not so much so. I'm looking at other sites like the 1,500 pot limit Omaha, it's $1,425 plus 75. I think the turbos are raked slightly less. So like the lower buy-ins. So obviously when you're at the lower buy-ins, the rake is generally higher as a percentage, but it seems like there's a bit of a discount for the super turbos. The WSOP.com stuff is a complete salad of rakes. So Ryan LaPlante posted this, and so at the bottom end, it's high, but at least it makes sense. It's 360 plus 40, 450 plus 50, 540 plus 60. So we're basically looking at 11-ish% for the most part, 700 plus 77, and then you get 950 plus 50. So for some reason, a $950 tournament is the same rate as a $450 tournament and pays less rate than a $700 tournament. Then you have 1,425 plus 75, and then you have 3,040 plus 160. So this seems like an arbitrary dartboard of rake numbers that's thrown together by WSOP.com. I hope they change it. I'm pretty sure there's still enough time. Actually, I guess not. It's pretty much starting right now. So forget what I just said. I thought they'd have time to run it past the gaming commission and get that changed. But people, like that combined with the very fast structures, it's a bit disappointing to see the WSOP.com rake. On the other hand, people bitch about the rake. Everybody's going to play anyway. Like, how many people are actually not going to play because the rake is such a small number? Because, as Daniel's fond of pointing out, the people who the fish don't care about rake, and the pros only care about where the fish are. So, and then there's the rest of the people who are just bracelet chasers, and the rake certainly isn't going to matter to them. So, WSOP is just doing what's in their best interest by maximizing the amount of money that they can make on this one. And that's fair. They've spent a lot of money to ensure they bought the WSOP brand. They've made it this big event. Caesars has over this time. They've made it a desirable good. So they made it a luxury commodity. It's no different than a diamond company, De Beers, selling diamonds, even though diamonds are just pieces of rocks that are pressed into the ground. A luxury item. They've managed to market this as a luxury item. A high-end sweater can cost $6,000, or it can cost $100, and it's still a sweater at the end of the day. So it's all about branding. It's all about marketing. So the rake is in my opinion, it's too high. I don't like that idea. But on the other hand, I can't blame the World Series and Caesars for doing what they do and trying to maximize profit.
Yeah, I will say this one small thing I want to add. If this comes out the wrong way, pitchforks. But so if you are a professional poker player, right, and the difference between you being a winning player and a losing player is 6% rake versus 5% rake, then you're probably not quite good enough yet to be doing that professional. Okay, like if that is the thing, if it's that close for you, right? Obviously, the higher the rake, the more it cuts into your profits. But if it literally, if a 1% increase has you go from being a winning player to a losing player, then you're far too close to break even to consider it as a living, something fun to do as a hobby, to maybe continue to improve your game so that you're better, so that your advantage or your edge is bigger. But yeah, that the number one predominant factor you should consider when buying into a tournament is like, how tough are my opponents, right? And obviously, if you play in the 25K or the 100K, the primary concern is going to be these guys are really, really good. And it won't be the difference between a rake being 10% or 8%. It'll just be the skill level of those players is so much higher. So you want to make sure that when you are playing tournaments, you look at the field types and say, okay, I'm definitely a favorite over these guys, whether it's 5%, 6.5%, or 7%. Like, I'm going to beat these guys over the long run.
All right, so moving on. Unless anybody, do you guys anything else on the World Series before we move on?
I assume we're going to talk about bracelet bets.
Oh, right. Okay, so let's move on to the bracelet bets. Daniel, you put out there something to motivate yourself, as you have done in the past. You wanted to take on anybody who wanted to play you must-win bracelet bet. So if you bet somebody, heads up, and you both win a bracelet, the bet is a wash. If they win one and you don't, they win the bet. If you win one, they don't, you win the bet. So talk about why you did that and what kind of action you got. What was the reaction to that?
Okay, yeah. So first and foremost, I don't do it for motivation because I'm motivated anyway. Like, I do it because it's kind of fun. I think other people, it's something fun to talk about. It's something to throw out there. And there are two separate bets that I offered. One you mentioned, which is me versus anybody, a must-win bet. So basically, if you both win a bracelet, the bet is a wash. If one of you wins a bracelet, the other doesn't, then you win. If one wins 4 and the other one wins 1, it doesn't matter. It's just it's a yes/no bet. So we have that bet. And I also offered a bet where I was taking 2.5 to 1 odds, up to $1 million that I'd win a bracelet in the year 2020. Now that includes WSOP, it includes GG, and it would also include a potential fall event if that were to exist. So I covered all the bases in the wording of that. I got a very small action on that, which is surprising because I think 2.5 to 1, you're supposed to jump on that because I don't think that's a good bet from my perspective. I'm surprised I didn't get as much. I did get a lot more action on the one-on-one bets. Connor Drynan, who obviously just came off a massive 5 scoop titles. I decided to put a maximum on per player bets. So he bet the full 100,000. I got another 100,000 in from Ali Amshurovich. And though both of those bets are covering both WSOP and GG. Obviously, that's not feasible for everybody because not everyone's going to be doing that. These two guys are. So I did make, and I probably will be making a lot more GG-specific bets. Plano Pads, who won't be coming to the United States, Patrick Leonard, he took me up on 100K on GG with one stipulation. It has to be August 1st or later because it wouldn't be fair for me to give them like a 2-week head start since I'll be playing the WSOP to its fullest. I do have some smaller action, here and there with a few people, but those are the big meaty ones right now. I know Daniel Dvorak has expressed interest on the GG side, and I'm sure he'll go for the full 100K. So it's kind of fun for me in that even though I'm like up against like insane wizards, it's a fun way to get like a pretty good price, right? So let's say I take on, let's say 20 people take me up on the 100K bet, right? So if I win a bracelet and they don't, that's 2 million. So like I get, because I'm getting paid off in 20 spots. Now, what are the odds that like more than one of them do? Probably unlikely, but let's say my risk is maximum 300K, but if I do win one, I win like $2 million extra. That's fun, that makes it a lot more fun. It's kind of a fun way to, because what I've learned, again, fuck Timex for this, but I learned I don't like laying 100 to 1 on anything. Stupid, it sucks. I'll never do it again. You guys fucked me because of Timex. You had him on the podcast. I said, I don't want him on the podcast. It's going to cost me money. You brought him. You guys, and fuck that guy. What's his name? Screwed me with the dumping the lead. But anyway, neither here nor there. I'd rather take the 20 to 1s and the 100 to 1s than lay them.
The heads up bets, they would not include live poker in Vegas if it were to happen, or they would?
The two bets we have with Drynan and Ali do also count.
Okay.
The later in the year bets. The ones with Plano Pads is GG specific, and I believe that I have a couple WSOP specific ones. Does
Ali Ancerovic play non-flop games?
I believe that he will likely play PLO and short deck because that's
right. But I was talking about if there's a Vegas World Series, and I know that seems unlikely at this point. That seems like where all the mixed games and all the other non-traditional games will happen. Is that probably I assume that if they have a World Series of Poker in November, it'll be very heavy on maybe this is just my feeling and maybe my optimism, but there'll probably be a lot of mixed games in which you would be a huge favorite over most of the no limit and PLO wizards.
Yeah, I doubt that though. Like I think that if there was going to be one in November, it would be a condensed version, and I think the main objective would be to get the main event off. And the main event is already 2 weeks long, so I would imagine it would still be no limit and PLO heavy with a couple mixed games here and there, which obviously does give me an advantage. Ali is not he doesn't play a lot of mixed games. Both smart guys, you can probably figure it out, but I've got plenty of experience to feel comfortable being a favorite in mixed games.
What are your guys' thoughts on Kings Casino hosting some sort of live World Series of Poker, given that they've opened? I think
that's a great idea, really. I mean, I'm Leon is a bit of a questionable character, and I think there's enough to think that that's the question. But I mean, if you're going to run it anywhere, I mean, the Czech Republic has shown great response to COVID-19 and seemed to be really ahead of the curve and really good at stamping that out. I don't know if the Czech government would want people flying in from all over the world, but it's it's in as much as one likes Kings Casino, that's probably the place to do it.
Yeah, Daniel, I mean, can you see a complete schedule there rather than this 11, 12, I can't remember how many tournaments there were there last year for the European World Series of Poker, but let's say Nevada, which doesn't look fantastic at the moment, and there's a second wave and nothing really happens, and it's decided that they can't host a World Series of Poker, nobody's going to come, or travel restrictions or what have you. Oh, okay, well, now we're going to hold it at Kings Casino. We're going to have 73 events there, November 1st through December 15th. I mean, is that something that could happen, Daniel?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, there is no second wave. It's still the first wave. Just everybody got fucking bored and then just was like, screw it, YOLO, and let's just go out and get crazy. So it feels like, that's a side track thing. But as far as World Series Poker Europe, the only consideration I would think is obviously they'd want to have one in Nevada, and they are currently, there is poker in Nevada. People are playing in Las Vegas, and it remains to be seen. I mean, it is a possibility. I doubt that you would have the actual main event there, but at this point, I think if you're the World Series of Poker, you're Leon, you're King Casino, you're essentially not ruling out anything at this point, right? Like you keep your door open, you keep your, you keep your options open. It's obviously good for business for both of them if they can get something done. But I would just be guessing. I mean, I would say that yes, it's possible, but I mean, I have no intel to suggest that anything like that's going to happen.
So is the wicket still open, or are you still accepting bets? And you've capped off against what, 2 or 3 guys?
Yeah, I've got caps against Patrick Leonard, Connor Drynan, and Alim Shervich, but I'm accepting new bets. And as I said, I will likely be accepting WSOP only as well as GG. I think I'll get more action on GG because a lot of the high stakes guys that would put up real big money, they'll be playing the GG series, and I don't think they're going to – like a lot of European guys. Like, I bet Fedor will probably take me up on it and some others.
And you also in the past had sold some of your action. Are there any plans on doing that this year?
Yeah, well, the great thing about GG Poker is, as I said before, is you can do it within the client. So what I'm likely going to do is I'll figure out a way to – I don't know, I'm trying to figure out a way to get it because I think it'll sell out pretty quickly where we can get it out and give people a chance to get to it. But I'm going to put it right in the client so you can buy. Like, and I'll put a limit on how much you can buy, like 1%. And what's great about that is, smart contracts where, you buy the piece, your money comes out of your account. As soon as I cash or win, money's in your account. Easy peasy.
Perfect. Terrence, thoughts? Are you loading up your GG account? You going to play a bunch of tournaments?
I will definitely play some. One thing I've actually been doing in advance is buying Bitcoin this week because I figure, not because I like speculating on Bitcoin, but just because I figure I'll need some because you can deposit on GG with Bitcoin. And for me, that's been the easiest way. None of my credit cards seem to work. So if you're listening to this and you plan to play, I mean, especially if you plan on firing 21 bullets in the main event, you might want to buy some Bitcoin. But I'll play. I think I mentioned to you guys offline, but I've been playing a little bit of short deck. I figure that's probably, I mean, other than the 2 limit hold'em events, probably my best opportunity to win a World Series bracelet this year is probably in short deck because I'm not very good at short deck, but most people aren't. Yeah, like I figure listen, like there's so many brilliant no limit hold'em and pot limit Omaha players out there in the world today that I would have to do a lot of catching up, and I'm just not in a position time wise where I can put in the amount of effort that it takes to be an elite world class no limit or PLO player at this juncture in 2020. But I can probably get in okay at a game that not everybody is very good at, or at least most people don't have tons of experience at. Those are also in the Asia time zone, so that'll be fun. They start at 8 a.m. Eastern time, so 5 a.m. Pacific. So basically 45 minutes between when either my puppy or my toddler is waking me up these days. So not too bad. So I'm gonna keep limping into pots with the old King 9 suited over and over, which feels weird, but you do it.
Is there an online seniors event? There is, right?
There is on WSOP.com, yes.
That's awesome. That's going to be...
joked about that one and said they like Jungle Man's chances in that.
Yes, Jungle Man is a big favorite.
He's the punchline at the moment. All right, let's move on from the World Series of Poker. Maria Konnikova, who came on the poker scene in the last little while, she was a writer who decided to try her hand at poker, and she had some success. She was actually coached by Eric Seidel, I believe, who took her under his wing and taught her how to play and gave her some tips and mentored her a little bit. She's written a book called The Biggest Bluff. And a lot of people who have read it think it's a really good book and interesting to read. So if you're a poker player and you're looking for something out there to read.
I'm about a third of a way through it. I'm finding it very enjoyable. Yeah. So pardon me?
You got it already? Man, what do you get, advanced copy?
No, I just ordered it on Kindle. It's on the Kindle. It's already in there. But yeah, I look, it takes me a lot to get to read poker stuff these days. But when everybody started glowing reviews about it, basically everybody I followed on Twitter said that had already read it, who got an advanced copy, said it was great. And I was like, okay, well, this many people can't be wrong. And I've really been enjoying it. I'm about a third of a way through it. We've talked about the old sort of classics in the poker literature, the biggest game in town and the Professor, the Banker, the Suicide King, like all these books that were sort of part of our era of poker because we're old men, that we really enjoyed when we were coming up in the game or when we were pros and this kind of stuff. And I think this book, I think it's on that level. I mean, Maria Konnikova is not a poker player, as you mentioned. She's a writer first and a poker player second, and I think those people tend to do a really good job at playing at writing books, and she's a good writer. It's interesting. If you've ever wondered what it'd be like to be a complete beginner coached by someone of Eric Seidel's caliber, I mean, that's an interesting story in itself. I think she mentions in the book that Eric said he's never coached anyone before. So he just, he took her under his wing, and, she learned a lot. She had a psychology background. You get some interesting stuff about how that affects her poker playing, and how being a woman affects her poker playing, and how she started out as this, this really passive player trying to be an aggressive player, but it wasn't really working out for her because it wasn't her style. And so she sort of finds her niche. There's a lot of life lessons in there. Yeah, I'm only a third of the way through, and I think it's a really good read. And so I think people who listen to this podcast will really enjoy it for a variety of reasons.
Cool. Check that out. All right, let's move on to some tweets.
You're going surfing on the internet.
All right.
T, you got some.
I got some, but the first one was by Daniel's request, so I threw it in there. But Olivier Bousquet, a 1-0 professional MMA fighter and heads up No Limit specialist, says tournament organizers and online operators mostly don't care what the professional community wants, and in my opinion, there is a clear reason why. Thus far, we have proven ourselves unable to effectively organize to collectively bargain for what we want/need. We need to form a union. And so I'll let that go without comment and throw it to Daniel. You wanted this
It's
one
hard.
in there.
It's hard to let it go without comment, though, isn't it?
Yeah, so Daniel, take it away.
Well, I thought it was interesting because, as far as I know, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, like a union is a group of employees, right, who ask for certain rights from their employers, right?
Typically, yes.
Would this be the first union ever where the union is a bunch of customers, specifically customers who take? It's just kind of an odd thing where, because they're not employees, right? Like professional employees of a company, they're independent contractors. Can independent contractors even do that? Form a union? I think I don't know if you meant specifically union. I get the idea of having sort of a player council that can make requests and things like that. But as far as like a union, it's weird to think that like customers, especially the customers, like I said, who are pulling money out from other customers, would be the ones that, I don't know. Can you even do that?
There are things that are, consumer groups and stuff like that. I mean, it's a hard thing to think about in practice. I followed up with a question, I tried to ask him. So, so this idea happens every time people are mad at casinos for whatever. They could be things like the rake or the structure or the playing environment or whatever it is. It could be about, the Mike Postel thing and all the injustices that occurred there. It could be a wide variety of things. There is a reason for players to organize because they do often have legitimate grievances, but each individual player is not powerful enough. But maybe if you got enough people together, then maybe you could do something about it. The problem we've seen with this with boycotts and such is that there's a really strong incentive to defect. If all the pros boycott whatever the Venetian, then that just makes the game softer, and as we know, like, people will defect from this arrangement because it's not in their financial best interest. There were a few good things brought up in this thread, like, could professional poker players organize in a way that they could get health care in the United States? Because that's a big problem for poker pros, because they don't have jobs. They're not, the way the U.S. healthcare system works is, your insurance, your medical insurance is tied to your job. That's the kind of thing. I asked Olivier, so what happens if somebody crosses the picket line, so to speak? Are they shunned? Are they are they strongly discouraged? Are they sued? And he didn't really have much of an answer for that. Some people suggested, well, if you do something like that, then you're no longer eligible for the benefits that the union provides. So we won't go to bat for you if you're scammed or something like that. We won't fight a legal battle for you. I mean, there's I understand that, at least the sort of idea better after engaging for a while, but I don't think it's a realistic proposition.
Well, here's what I don't get, right? Like, so if you have a factory, like, you need workers in that factory to function. So if those factory workers get together and create a union, like, you have to, like, sort of meet their demands to some degree, right? But none of them are needed, right? Like, if you're talking about professional poker players, in order to run, as you mentioned, Terrence, like, in order to run, really good juicy games, like, that's not a group that's required in the equation. They obviously help with liquidity, and they bring, they help to start games and things like that. But, like, all you need to have a poker game is someone running it, and recreational players to play it. The one part of the trilogy that is just completely unnecessary is professional. So it feels like you're bargaining from a really weak standing because you don't really have anything to stand on. Like, you are not necessary for this to flourish, right? Like, games, there are plenty of private games that exist with no professional poker players. And they're not, I don't know. If there's 3 cogs to the wheel, how is the one cog that is completely unnecessary going to make any demands? It just seems like, okay, you would just basically shrug at him and go, okay, don't play.
Well, I mean, I guess I would say that people fighting for, lower rake would be considered fighting for the long-term health of the industry. And I'm not saying any specific site or anything, but if a site becomes big and decides that, we're just going to, maybe try and maximize our profits for the next year and just up the rake and destroy the economy, then that's bad for long-term as well. So, fighting for lower rake, while Daniel points out, some of the players, it's not the end of the world to the site if they don't come back because these are net winners, et cetera. But in the same sense, it's also good that people are out there putting pressure on sites, or trying to put pressure on them anyways, to keep rates lower for the longer term health of the industry.
Yeah. I got another tweet from Jared Greiner. It says, he was playing online yesterday and I saw someone with the screen name Potamophobia. Looked up the definition and, oh my God, one of the best screen names I've ever seen. And he screenshots the definition of potamophobia. Do either of you have a guess as to the dictionary definition of potamophobia?
I knew, because I know that guy. Didn't that guy win a tournament? He just won a tournament recently on GG. I'm sure, a really big tournament.
I do know it.
It's
actually, it's the fear of rivers.
The fear of rivers. Yes, that's right.
Fantastic screen name. That is a really good one.
That is good. That's one of the best.
The aforementioned Patrick Leonard has a tweet at Pad's Poker. He says, "Is the future of poker virtual reality Zoom/fast forward? You sit at a table, 5 others are there virtually. You click fold and you go to a new table full of people teleported there, stop spots, etc. But you get to play decent volume." And I mentioned before, maybe we'll have webcam poker in the future, and then that's a topic for another time. But Max Silver had the nut response on this, which was, if the future of online poker means me putting my ass where my face should be, if you stack me, sign me up.
Well, yeah, that's the problem, right? With webcams, it's going to go sideways really quickly.
You can't make sure it's only on the person's face. We don't have that technology yet. Imagine being a female poker player at the table and how much of a nightmare that would be.
Oh God,
dicks everywhere.
Just dicks everywhere.
All right.
It's going to be a drop at some point. I just said
dick.
Hey, I have this one.
It's either I'm going to win the pot or I'm going to suck a lot of dicks.
Oh, all right.
I hope I won the pot.
Roscoe, do we have some voicemails?
Yeah.
Why don't we do 2? How about 2?
All right. The first one is a hand history from a couple weeks ago, so maybe we'll do some strategy.
Email number.
Hey guys, my name's Dan. I'm from Boston. Love the show and had a hand. I wanted your feedback on them. So the hand is at 2-4 no limit on a private online site. And Dylan is a solid, aggressive regular who plays a little bit too loose. So we pick up aces in the cutoff, raise to 16 using a bigger raise size because it's a high rate game. And Dylan plays a little bit too loose. The villains play too loose pre-flop. Dylan 3-bets to 55. We 4-bet to 160. Dylan 5-bets to 400. And we flat to 400, trying to keep his bluffs in because it's difficult to balance out a 6-bet and call 5-bet range. So flop is Jack 10-4 rainbow. There's 800 in the pot, and we each have 2100 behind. We check. Dylan bets 280, and we call, keeping his bluffs in. And the SPR is low enough at 1.3 that we can get the money in later streets. Turn is a 10. There's 1360 in the pot. Check, check. River 10. We jam 1800 into 1360. Trying to get value from his kings and queens, and Dylan tanks all the way down and folds kings face up. So I'd like your guys' feedback on the hand. Would you play it differently, maybe 6-betting pre-flop, possibly raising the flop, or using a different river size? Thanks for your feedback, guys.
Wow. The guy actually folded kings face up?
Yeah.
So,
I was thinking as he's reading this hand, I think I play this hand exactly the same way. I like how he played every straight.
Great. I was like, everything he did makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
In every spot, like pre-flop, makes a lot of sense to keep the bluffs in on the flop. There's no point raising. check, turn. And in the river, you just go, you literally target kings or queens, which, shouldn't be able to fold. I guess you just got to credit, your opponent here who, makes an insanely good laydown. Like that's hard to do. I mean,
okay, can I ask you guys about pre-flop? Because from what I see, when you get, 5 and 6 bets deep and you've got aces, it feels like you should be targeting kings. Like, it's pretty hard to, you don't see a ton of people laying down kings pre. Do you feel like flatting there instead of targeting kings where he's probably going to call?
So here's the thing, right? So if you're the villain 5 bet, if you're 6 betting your aces, like that means you can essentially never ever call the 5 bet, right? Because then that tells him you don't have aces. And so
being balanced with your 6 betting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I mean, how important is being balanced at 2-4 on a random app? I'm just saying, particularly if we look at this particular hand.
A thinking player because he laid down kings on the river. So.
No, I'm saying, yeah, okay, but you know what I'm saying. Like, in general, is completely out of the question to 6 bet there when you want to maybe target kings?
Yeah, I wouldn't. But there's one other thing that I think may have been worthwhile for this player. He said there was 800 in the pot, right? It may have made more sense on the river to make a smaller bet to just ensure that you get called. Because here's the problem: when you overbet as much as you did there on the river, like your range is what, like aces. It's not queens. You're not doing that with queens, so he knows that. So it's basically like aces or ace king or the other kings,
or
right?
bluffs.
He had 2 of the kings. Well, what bluffs?
Well,
Really?
ace king is the bluff, I think, is what he meant. Yeah.
Ace king is the bluff, where it just misses and says YOLO, I'm going for it. So I think the only thing I would have done is, like, again, it depends on the player. Like, if it's just some random Yahoo, I think the sizing's perfect. But maybe against like a really good pro, you might want to give him a better price on playing the kings, or even in some cases, bet really, really small and hope that you get raised, in some spots. But so there was 800 in pre. Was there a bet on the flop or a small bet?
Yeah, he check called on the flop. Right?
How much was check called on the flop?
He said there was like a stacked pot of 1.3 left. So I don't know. I'd have to hear it again, but
So anyway, yeah, maybe the sizing on the river didn't have to be full.
If you've got the main thing is he had 1.3 pots on the river, right? So I think it has to be either a check, a very small bet, or a very large bet. Like the in between, the 2/3 pot or the pot size bet is definitely the worst choice. So it's got to be very small. It's got to be a bet that looks like a blocker, or it's just got to be all in, right?
I think half can be fine. I think you can bet half there too. Yeah. I mean, I think you're pretty. You're probably supposed.
Would you bet half there if you were bluffing with ace king? Is that sort of the idea?
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to think of like, well, yes, essentially, right. You're thinking that like that doesn't change your balance in terms of the combos of bluffs that you have if you're betting half or 3/4. So I mean, it's all possible. I think all bets are fine. I just wonder, again, now knowing this against this player, like he's picked up some valuable information. But as played, I agreed with Terrence when I first heard it. I was like, no, this sounds like a really well played hand. The only thing I think pre-flop was played perfectly. The only thing I think possibly, for really nitpicking was bet sizing on the river. Outside of that, I can't think of anything I would do different.
Email number 2.
Hey guys, this is Scott Anderson coming to you from Bentonville, Arkansas, home of Walmart Corporate. You're welcome, America. Really for Daniel, I really love watching the early broadcasts of the World Poker Tour and the World Series of Poker. You just seem to get more of a genuineness with your characters back then that you don't see quite as much nowadays. But one of my favorite final tables I ever watched was the World Poker Tour from 2003 at the Foxwoods. I mean, you had the Alabama Cowboy, Hoyt Corkins winning the whole thing. You had Mr. Drama himself, Phil Hellmuth, coming in third. But my question for Daniel is more about Mohamed Ibrahim. He was a real fun guy to watch play. I really enjoyed watching him. And my questions for Daniel are about Mo. One, I remember you and Ted Forrest being in the audience and cheering him on. I was just curious if y'all had a piece of Mo in the tournament or if he had all of himself and y'all were just there to cheer him on because he was a friend. And the other question I have is just whatever happened to Mo. I'd read some rumors online about him that I don't want to repeat here because if they're not true, it's just not fair to him to repeat them if they're not true. But I was just curious if you had any idea of what happened to Mo. I just miss seeing him on TV. Thanks, guys. Love the show. Bye-bye.
Okay. Before Daniel talks, this guy trolled both me and Terrence in fantastic fashion. I don't know if it was on purpose, but if it was, If it wasn't, whatever. Fantastic job. Hoyt Corkins, of course. Terrence lost to, right, T?
My only heads up for a bracelet was
your only
was
heads up
down
for
the-
bracelet.
yeah.
And
then
Mohammed.
your end.
on my end, my very first World Series poker event, I made the final table and finished 4th or 5th. I can't remember. But Mohammed won the tournament. So fantastic troll job. Second, I've got a whole bunch of Mohammed stories and information, but let's go to Daniel first.
Okay, so the fact that he brought up Mohammed Ibrahim right now is really bizarre to me because I hadn't talked to him in 2-3 years, and literally about a week ago, he texted me out of the blue, asking me like, "What's up with GG Poker?" Right? So it's so strange that he brought up his name. So he's still in Egypt with his family right now. So back then, yes, I mean we were just really, really like rooting for him. Now, of course, we had
Mohammed didn't have a full of himself in any.
Mohammed is, without question, one of the craziest gamblers I've ever seen in my life. Like literally top notch. There's a point where I'll tell you 2 quick ones with him. Like there's a point where he started with like 10K. He built it up to like playing craps. He built it up to like he had 900K on a roll. Didn't take anything off. Let it ride. Right. That's Mohammed. Another fun story. He was in Tunica, I think. And he was playing blackjack, and he was stuck like 300,000. He's down to his last 10K, and he gets 20, and the dealer has like an 8, and he's going in for his last 10K, and he says, "Hit me," and she's like, "You have 20." He goes, "You're not going to bust me. I'm going to bust myself, you motherfuckers."
Yeah. So actually,
the next day, obviously, like with no money, going, "Holy shit!" And he tried to get his 10K back from them.
we had Greg Hopkins, who was actually with Mohammed on that trip. He's an old school poker player from LA. We had him on the PokerCast back in the day, and he told the whole complete story of that trip to Tunica and the run up that Mohammed had. And there's some amazing poker content in it. Mohammed calls the guy down with 9-9 is right. Ross, I don't know if you can pull it. It's on YouTube, the actual story. We posted it on YouTube back in the day. Maybe you can add it to just the audio version to the end of this podcast for people, because it's an amazing, and I agree with Daniel. I think in the 25 years I've played poker or gambled for a living, he is the most, and I'm not going to say crazy, because he has the most gamble in him of any human I've ever seen in my life. He is fascinating to be around. He
makes
just
Phil
to watch
Ivey timid. He makes Phil Ivey timid.
Ivy's a nit compared to Mohammed. There's so many great stories about Mohammed, but that one that Greg Hopkins told, maybe we'll throw it at the end. Do you want to do
bonus
one more
content for the download?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's wrap it up quickly. Poirier and Hooker just stepped in the ring, and this one's going to be a banger.
Okay, we got some MMA to watch. We've gone overtime a little bit here. Thanks so much to everybody out there. Thanks to you guys for getting together this week to talk some poker. We will get some better production, but hang in there. This is as good as it's going to be for a little bit, but we'll work on it. Thanks to everybody out there. We will talk to you soon.
Story number 2 is the sick one. that isn't even the best one. I have to prepare for this one. This one's already been in print, but I guess he probably wouldn't mind if I tell. He calls me up one day and he says, "Okay, pack enough stuff for a week. We're going to Tunica." And this was like an off time to go to Tunica. There was no tournament going on, but they had been playing Pot Lemon Omaha out there, and there had been some guys coming from Texas to play that were pretty bad. You'd lose a lot of money. And I said, "What do I need to bring?" And he said, "Just bring clothes. I got this one covered." So I get ready, and he picks me up at my house, and we go to the airport. And he goes, "Okay," and he hands me $50,000, and he says, "Okay, this, you carry this." This is after 9/11, by the way, so Mohammed Ibrahim's probably not the best name to be flying with flying with a big bunch of cash. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, so we go out there and we check in. It's the night the game starts, so of course he's not going to rest first. He's just going to go jump straight in the game. We go down. I'm sitting behind him. He says, "Give me 10,000." So now I'm up to the fact that the 50 he gave me is all that we have. They're playing 1,500 blinds. He says, "Give me 10,000." So I give that to him, and he dusts that off in about 15 minutes. And the same for the second 10, and the third 10 he managed to actually run up to about 80. which was what about he quit the night with. So we had like 100. He actually he was a good boy, went to his room, went to sleep. Next day, he did pretty much the same thing, won another 60 maybe. And then Jack Keller was chirping at him to play heads up. And Jack had been going pretty good. Jack had his BR up to about 1 million. And Muhammad said, okay. So they started playing heads up. I think they played the first match for 25,000. They might have played a couple of those. And anyway, in a day and a half, he had Jack broke.
Wow.
So we had about 700,000 at the end of that. And Jack couldn't get any more money, so he quit him. And lo and behold, Action Jackson comes to town. Action Jackson, I don't really know too well, but he was the guy that used to bet 5,000 every roll and take max odds out in Tunica playing craps, so apparently he had a little bit of money. And he wanted to play Muhammad heads up, and it started out, they played a match for 100, and Muhammad spotted him the button. And he beat him like 3 in a row that way, and Action Jackson finally decided that maybe he wasn't the one getting the spot, so he didn't want the button anymore. And Muhammad started laying him like 250 to 200 or something. And they played a few of those, and Muhammad was still winning. And going into the last match, and this was the biggest one, Muhammad had him down to, I don't know, just under 60,000. And a hand came up where Muhammad raised it, and Action Jackson calls, and it comes deuce 4-5. And Action Jackson leads out, bets the pot, Muhammad calls. Comes a jack, bets the pot, Muhammad calls. Comes another jack, and he bets the pot again, which is now like $36,000 bet. And he only has maybe 8 or 10,000 left, and Muhammad sits back, and he goes, man, I know I have the best hand. And I hadn't seen his cards up to this point, but he held his hand up, and I could see that he had 9-10. And he's
deuce 4-5 9-10.
Deuce 4-5 Jack Jack.
Oh, deuce 4-5 Jack Jack.
Muhammad has the 9-10, and he says, I know I have the best hand. And he goes, okay, I call. And Action Jackson taps the table and says, good call. I mean, you could have like King 3 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So Muhammad says, what you got? He makes him turn his hand over. He had the 6-7, so Muhammad turns over the 9-10, and then he wins the rest of his money. And Action Jackson quit him at that point.
Wow.
Decided he couldn't play anymore, which proceeded to put Muhammad on tilt. And at the end of that hand, we had about $1.8 million
from 50,000.
From 50. We'd been there for 4 days. So we were up in the room, and Muhammad had a guest. The phone rang, and it was someone that wouldn't appreciate the guest, and the guest happened to answer.
Oh.
This caused a little bit of a spat. Muhammad now went down to the blackjack table.
Because he's tilted?
Yeah, he was a little bit steaming. He only took like maybe 100 or whatever. He lost that. He came back to the room. He took more. Pretty soon he had taken it all. And he had also taken credit from Jack Binion for about $1.1 million and lost all that. But right at the end of the thing, he was down to this one stretch of cards. The dealer had just made 21 like every hand, not having blackjack, just 4 cards, whatever, 5-card 21s. And Muhammad was going crazy, and he said, okay, you're not going to bust me, I'm going to bust myself. And he went from betting 10,000 a hand at 6 hands or whatever they would let him bet to 500 a hand, and he just hit every single hand until it busted. He had blackjack one hand, he hit it till it busted. One hand he had 18, he hit it, he caught a face card, he said, hit it again. The dealer looked at the floorman, the floorman was like, yeah, okay, let him hit it.
So he lost the 1.8 plus another 1.1, so he loses almost $3 million playing blackjack?
Yeah, and it gets worse on top of that afterwards. He had borrowed some money from Ted Forrest that he had put in the bank so that he could get credit. And it was like $500,000, so he wasn't supposed to do anything with that. So naturally, he flew home and got it out of the bank and brought it back to Tunica. And he went to a different casino this time because he owed the other ones. So he went to he went to Lyle's casino, and he dumped it all on the table. And by the way, this was, like 5 days after we had just done this, and we came with $500,000 in a bag on the plane. That was a fun trip for me. Cavity search, anyone? Yeah, in fact, to this day, every time I fly, I'm still flagged for some reason. I get searched every time, but it's random, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he dumps it all on the table. He starts making his same $10,000 bet across the table, and the people don't really know what to do because they don't know how much money it is. So they bring the counting machine to the table, and they're counting the money right at the table. And he lost all of it before they finished counting. So now he has to go back home, and he has to tell Ted what he did. So that's probably going to go over well, right?
In the bag.
Yeah. So he goes back and tells Ted what he did. Somehow he manages to get a hold of some money again from Ted, which I don't understand how. And he ran that up at the Bellagio, playing heads up against Nick Frankos or somebody, and playing in some ring games. So he had $1.4 million again, and then he proceeded to dust that off in one night playing blackjack at the Bellagio. So he went through about $6 million in 10 days.